Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, this is Jessica, and I am here with
Donna Rosenblum.
and we are gonna
Turn the page.
for Turn the Page podcast at Syosset Library. Welcome, Donna.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Donna, would you like to talk a little bit about your who you are, what you do, how you got into librarianship?
Sure. I am the supervisor of Nassau Boces School Library System. That's my most recent position. Prior to that, I was a school librarian at Flower Park Memorial, at Hicksville Middle School, at Glen Cove Elementary Schools, and a former social studies teacher at Glen Cove. So library and teaching have been my whole career.
That's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
When you started as a teacher, did you have like that little, dewy sense tingling that you were gonna go into libraries?
No, I didn't know. I didn't think about library as a career, believe it or not. I used to hang out at the library. I always loved libraries. I grew up in Queens, and my mother actually brought me to the bookmobile.
Oh, nice.
Every Tuesday the bookmobile would come, and that was my mother really, is the driving force behind my love of books, my reading. She was like my own tutor. She helped me with everything. Math was not my strong subject. My mother was always a great mentor and teacher. And she really encouraged me to love books because she loved to read. So wherever we went to the library. And the real turning point was when I was about 12. My mother decided she wanted to go to college. This was in the late 70s. And my mother and father had a huge fight because my father didn't want to allow my mother to go to college. At this time, yeah. And my mother basically stood her ground and said, I am going to college. And my father said, and my father was a wonderful person, but my father was like, okay, well, you can go to college, but you still work and you still have to do all the housework and you still have to take care of everything and.
And where did she work at the time?
My mother at the time was worked in a doctor's office. She was a lab technician. So she went to school at night. And she used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do her papers and her research. And on Saturdays, she used to take me to the New York Public Library when she used to do her research. And I used to go to the children's room and spend hours just gallivanting.
What a wonderful mentor and role model for multitasking.
Exactly. And believe it or not, later in life, when I had 2 young children, I was working as an elementary librarian. I was going to library school, and I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do my own papers because that was the only quiet time that there would be. So, so libraries have always been, but I didn't think of it initially. It wasn't until a few years into teaching that I kind of said, wow, why don't I go back and get my master's in library science? And then I decided to do it.
I have talks with my own mother from time to time where she, she'll just say, and she's a teacher. She's semi-retired right now, but every now and then, she'll say, I really should have gone into library science, not to knock what she has done because she's done very well. It's just very interesting, watching on the other half, and I feel so fortunate to have found my home so early in life.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of librarians, it's a second career,
When I was in library school, I was the youngest, and most of the people I was with, it was a second career.
Yeah. So now I actually am an adjunct professor at Palmer Library School.
Nice. I wish you had been my professor at the time.
And I also taught at Queens College in their library program. So so now as supervisor of school library system, I really spend most of my time organizing professional development, trainings of all different kinds of things for my librarians and, just being there for them to help them with their day-to-day issues. Because, in schools, unfortunately, the librarian, there's one in the building. and they don't have the same type of team network that the teachers have. So I'm kind of their call-in, and we do online database. We provide the online databases like Nassau Library System does, and we do a lot of work in that area to provide support for the librarians.
There seems to be a huge shift in just the way libraries, school libraries, are being run now as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's the huge technology, of course, is paramount. And most of the kids are getting one-to-one devices. So, so the librarians are spending a lot of time with iPads and Chromebooks, doing a lot of makerspace, tech and non. And it's not terrible. As long as we always keep that literacy piece tied to it, then it works.
Yes.
We don't want to go, for me, we don't want to sacrifice the literacy, and only think about the technology.
What I always see it as is, we teach all different types of literacy. And as libraries themselves have really, yes, we started, books, library, Libra, it's in Libre, it's in the name. But we always assimilated what was coming up. So be it, like when we, what is it, microfiche or video or music.
Right.
We
always adapted.
We always adapt, and that's.
Right. Library is a changing place. It's not a set in stone. So we change and we embrace, and we try to be the equalizer. We give everybody the opportunity to have whatever it is that they want. And how many institutions can make that statement?
Not many.
Right. And librarians also, I try even within my class at Palmer, to really infuse the idea that, you don't have to like every genre, you don't have to be an expert, but you have to be able to recommend, you have to be diverse in your collections, and you have to be able to be the point person and to say, well, you know what? I don't know, I'll find it, or this is the great place to search, or you network with colleagues. There's always somebody in the library who has their little area, their niche of expertise, and we need to capitalize on that.
I agree.
Yeah.
And, I like, for public libraries specifically, I like that we are able to talk to our colleagues. And,
right.
I know I'd spent a lot of time when I was primarily children's, I was like the go-to sci-fi fantasy person because I read it all the time.
Right.
But I didn't really read a lot of mystery, and I had a coworker who read more mystery. So
That's the
we
best.
try to support each other.
Of course.
So what type of professional training have you found to be most relevant recently for school librarians?
You know what, I think for school librarians, a lot of it is being able to observe and see a workshop in action. So, we talk about having like an escape room or a breakout EDU or something like that.
Escape rooms are huge in libraries now.
Yes, very much so. But it's very hard to wrap your head around that, reading an article or even watching a video. The best way to do it is to actually go and watch one in action or participate in one in action and see the work that goes in behind the scenes. Because even if you actually participate in an escape room, you don't know the behind the scene part of it. And there's a lot of work, especially I watch the librarians who do it. They have to reset. So one class leaves and another one comes in, and they literally have 5 minutes to redo all the locks, all the clues, and so that's I'm a type of person where I learn by doing. So
I'm the same way.
Yeah. So I really encourage librarians to be able to go out and see things in action, and that's to me has always been the best way to learn. Teaching styles too. You can't learn from a book. You can get the theory, you can get the understanding, but you need to talk to somebody and say, okay, I want to do this. You did this. How'd you do it?
That's very true. And I'm in my first planning process of an escape room with our YA department. We're going to do a whole week of an all-ages escape room. And we're really excited about that. But, man, it's really interesting because we'll meet. And I don't know if you've met Nicole Sharer.
I know who she is. We spoke on the phone just last week.
She's great. And she's the escape room, the escape room mentor
Right.
for a lot of librarians. And she did an example for us. And when we all got together, we had this idea. And then we're like, but how does it all fit together? And that's really,
Yeah, that's the challenge. And, and making it challenging enough, but not too challenging.
Exactly.
At Merrick, I'm the president of the Merrick Library Board, and the teen librarian there, Louisa, does a wonderful job. And she just did a Marvel escape room, and she did Harry Potter escape rooms.
Louisa's very cool. I know her.
Yeah, she does a lot of great stuff. And she presented at one of my liaison meetings, and one of one of the Nassau librarians just did a Harry Potter event at her school, and one of the components was an escape room, and then the kids did a whole crafting area, kind of like a Harry Potter con, and then she had them play Quidditch in the gym.
Oh, that's
great.
great.
It was fabulous. So I went, in my costume with my time turner and my Gryffindor hat, and it was really great. So I love to see that kind of stuff.
I'm really excited to hear that schools are embracing this as well. Libraries, probably, I guess, for the last 10 years, I've seen a lot more conventions, cons at libraries. The first one that I was aware of was Tasha Con, which was in Rockville Center.
Yes.
That Marissa Lieberman did. And since then, there's been MCon, MinCon, and we have our con, SciCon. And it's really great because it brings that experience on a scale for everybody, I like to think. Either you're a seasoned convention goer or you've never done it before, you have a family, you want to try it. And I feel like libraries are just the best place for that. I'm so happy to hear schools.
Yeah, actually, when I worked at Floral Park Memorial, the Sewanaka librarians got together, and we host a con on a Saturday. We call it SewannaCon. And Justin Mirsky, Neely Resnick, Karen Nunziata, Joe Nola, all really were the ones behind, and myself planning that. And, we have a 4-hour con event. We have the 501st Legion. We have all different panels. We have they get to play Super Mario, and, it's all very organized, very tight. And it's fabulous, and the kids love it. And, to get 125 kids on a Saturday to come,
I know,
is just amazing.
Yeah.
So, there's something's being done right. So it definitely is working, and they're very, very active. So it's coming up in March, and even though I don't work there anymore, I still am involved, and I'll be there
Very
in
nice.
my Wonder Woman gear.
Very exciting.
So it's fun.
So would you like to talk a little bit about your organization?
Sure. So another hat that I wear is I am executive director of a nonprofit called Reason to Smile. And Reason to Smile helps support a school and a children's home in Matwapa, Kenya, called the Jambo Jipya School. So we send money, we fundraise, and we support the school, the tuition, food, uniforms, all of this. Plus we have some older kids now going to trade schools. We have one girl in university right now. And it's the more we expand, the more money we need, the more difficult it becomes. But, it's very, very rewarding. And I travel to Kenya twice a year. I went in November. I'll go again in the summer. And I work very closely with the director of the school. And, it's wonderful. So, and we last May got our our picture book published by Light Switch Learning called Name is Reason to Smile. And it's a fictionalized story based on the Jambo Jipya School. So we're very proud of that.
Of course. When did you get involved with that, and how did that come about?
That was another real labor of love. I got involved with Reason to Smile in 2010, 2011. And as a board member, I used to review for School Library Journal, and I decided to try to think about getting a book published. And one of the authors that I had reviewed found me Patty Newman. And Patty and I spoke on the phone, and she decided that she wanted to write this story. She's a nonfiction author. She's also a Robert Seibert honor medalist, and she's got a lot of fabulous books. So I was really excited about it. And she began. So the Name is Reason to Smile was the 4th rendition. of the original story. And, there are lots of rejection in that 7 to 8 year time frame. We got a couple of bites, and then they would say, well, we would really like it if you would change this or you would do that. And so Patty would go back and she would alter and she would change. And finally in 2017, Light Switch, who, agreed and said that we'll publish the book. And we have Mayor Amini is the illustrator. Beautiful illustrations, really fabulous. And again, all based on a lot of real pictures and video that we sent. So that was a real testament of just strong will and believing. You just have to continue no matter what someone says. You just have to keep plugging away. And we're very happy with the book. It's doing very well. Of course, it's not by a Scholastic or, so it doesn't get to compete in the same market, which is unfortunate. But, we just plug away. We do the best we can.
Do you have a favorite story that's come out of your work with the school?
Well, there's a lot of different things on here in the United States and in Kenya. We have a young lady who is attending the University of Nairobi right now. She's studying economics, and she's in her second, going into her third year. And basically, she would never be there if it wasn't for the financial support that Reasons to Smile is providing. Her tuition, her rent, her, everything, all her expenses. And she has, we WhatsApp text almost every day. And, she calls me her angel. She always, she says, I don't know where I would be if I didn't have, you and Reason to Smile. And she's almost like an adopted daughter of mine, in a way. So it's very rewarding, and to know that you are making a difference in the life. Maybe it's just one person's life, but it's still it's a worthy cause. And then, here also, there are many kids who just are just so excited to be involved in their schools with fundraising. And I had two young ladies, 5th grade and 1st grade, who read the book, who got so excited. They went to their principal and said, we want to do something. And the principal said, okay, well, what do you want to do? And they had some ideas, and they had spoken with me. They presented in front of the whole school. And at the assembly, the principal let them, and they raised $400.
Nice.
I mean, like, if I could just bottle that and get that everywhere, they were just so, they were just committed. They were like, we want to help. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to make it happen.
How old were they?
They were 10 and 6.
Good for them.
Amazing.
That's incredible. Were they siblings?
Yes,
okay.
Sisters. And, they had... and Patty, actually, I had a conference call between the author, the girls, and myself. We're trying to put together an article to get out there. And the younger girl, the older girl, had sent the email to the principal, and then didn't hear back from the principal, and kind of was like, And the younger girl said, well, what are we going to do about that? And, let's go to her office. I can't believe that she didn't.
That's pretty gutsy for a 6-year-old.
Exactly. She couldn't understand how the principal wouldn't respond. It just was too mind-boggling for her. So she said, let's go and see her. And then they made an appointment, and they physically met with the principal. And I think the principal was just so overwhelmed by these two girls, and that she,
what a good lesson in advocacy.
Well, that's one of the missions and one of the lessons of Name is Reason to Smile, among talking about education around the world and equal access to education, and the need for especially girls to be educated completely, is the idea of social action and being a force for change. And what can you do? And even if it's not Reason to Smile, or if you're not interested in education per se, there's so many ways that you can be a force for change. You just have to make up your mind as to what it is you're going to do, and you have to do it. And you have to understand that there are always going to be obstacles put in your path. There's always going to be the no word. And how do you let that affect you? Is the glass half empty, or is the glass half full? And that's an amazing skill. So these girls, they had it all, and I'm very, very proud of them. And it was really wonderful what they did.
That's great. So in your time at Boces, do you have any specific anecdotes? Any favorite course of professional development that you would like to talk about?
I mean, not a particular. I mean, we do so many different.
How many, if you don't mind me asking, how many schools are centralized by Boces? How many schools?
Well,
do
we
you
have
serve?
there are 56 schools in 56 districts, I should say. I'm sorry.
Right.
In Nassau County. So we service all of those schools, and we have 4 liaison meetings a year where we provide all different types of professional development to librarians. So each district has to send a liaison, and then they can also send other librarians to come. So, we do online database types of workshops. We do workshops on sustainability, on escape rooms, on primary sources, on fake news, on hacking school library. I mean, you name it.
Hacking school,
that's Christina Holsweiss,
who's now in our district here in Syosset.
Yes, she's fabulous.
Yes, she
and
is.
I when I was the librarian at Hicksville Middle School, Christina was an English teacher. And she used to come to the library, and we used to collaborate on lessons. And then she decided to go to library school, and of course she's an unbelievable force to be reckoned with.
She really is.
And in that hacking school libraries, SeWanACon is there's a little piece on SeWanACon there.
Nice.
So yeah, it was very, very great. So I love Christina, and she did a fabulous workshop for us a few months ago. Really great.
Now that was on advocacy.
It was on advocacy in the hacking school library. She just focused just on that piece of advocacy because there's so many things that her book deals with, and again, she only had 2 hours, so
of course you can't really go,
I would love for her to come and do a workshop on each hack. That would be great.
So your personal favorites. You just mentioned that you'd finished rereading the Harry Potter series.
Yep.
How many times have you read it?
This is only the second time. I read them as they came out, and then saw the movies as they came out. But now, for the first time, I read them all complete, and then watched the movie after finishing every book.
How did you feel about the adaptations?
I get that question a lot because so many books have been made into movies, and people say, I never look at the movie as the book. I don't ever go into a movie expecting it to be the book. I hope that it's true, but sometimes the adaptations work better. Certain changes they make in the film actually make sense.
It's funny that you say that because the beginning of the first Deathly Hallows movie, I think they did certain things so much better than they had in the books.
Right.
And one of the things that struck me was in the book, Hermione talks about how she just she erased her parents' memory and she sent them away. And
to Australia, wherever
and
it was.
And it was just a very it seemed very cold. There was no emotion in it. Hermione has always been very separate from her parents because her parents are of the Muggle world and they sound pretty muggly, even though they loved her very much.
Right.
Not like the Dursleys muggly,
right.
who I think someone once described as the muggliest Muggles of all. But she just kind of seemed like a throwaway, like, yeah, my parents are dentists, or yeah, my parents, I just send them to, they'll be fine in Australia. There was so much more emotion in the way that they wrote the script when you see her erasing herself
from their lives.
Yeah,
it was very powerful, And then on the other side, in the book, in that just because I just finished it, 3-4 days ago, when the Dursleys leave Privet Drive and Harry is going to be moved, Dudley actually has a moment.
I was so upset that
they
did not put. I think there's a scene. They think they filmed it and they just didn't put it in.
And where he actually looks at Harry and says, "We're never going to see you again." this is it.
It was
And
because he was like, well, why aren't you coming with
With
us?
us,
Which,
yeah.
on one hand, it's amazing because, well, why would he? They treated
Right.
him horribly. Although I think was it book 5 up? There was the book where they got attacked by the Dementors.
That's 6.
Right after
Yeah.
Harry saves Dudley's life.
Right.
There's like a turning point. And Dudley himself, very quietly, if you're reading between the lines, seems to, I mean, he doesn't become like the most wonderful person in the world.
No,
but
but
there's a shift.
he sees something different. Absolutely. And he hugs Harry in the
Yes.
book. And
Yes.
that was so powerful. And
Yeah.
I was disappointed. But look, they can't include
No, they
everything
can't.
and these are the decisions that are made. So in some ways changes work and in other ways they don't. And but I try not to have any real expectation. I go into it open-minded, like Ready Player One is a perfect example. The book and the movie were totally different.
Completely different.
And I enjoyed the book very much, but I enjoyed the movie very much
Right.
too.
Yeah.
It was not the book.
Right.
It was very different as opposed to something like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or, certain ones where The Giver is another one. The book it's one of my all-time favorite books. And the movie made some major changes. And I know some people were very upset by it, but in some ways they worked. And
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with it because I don't look at that movie as it's not the book.
The one of the movies that I grew up with, actually 2 of them, and I've said this so many times on this podcast, that children's entertainment was terrifying in the 70s and 80s. It was really scary. Whenever a parent comes in and they're just like, oh, I think that, don't you think that was a little scary, like in that one scene of Zootopia? I'm like, yeah, but we watched Artex die in the Neverending Story,
Right.
which I was it's funny. Like I've heard I don't know if you're familiar.
Yes.
With, yeah. Like I've heard that scene referred to as the horse that ruined a generation. I mean, it was just so devastating.
Right.
And also The Secret of Nim, which was Mrs. Frisbee and the
In
Rats of Nim. So you
Mhm.
want to talk about changes. The book by Michael, is it End? I say the Neverending Story.
Yeah, I don't-
It's
yeah.
a German book, very different. I know that the author was not fond of the movie, although many of us, that was the first introduction to that story that
right.
we had. So it's difficult to knock it. If
Right.
it was, even though it terrified us and made us cry, it was beloved to us too.
Right.
And then Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim was another one, and it was very good. I think, I forget who did the animated one. I feel like it was Don Bluth. But it was very beautiful, but they changed her name from Frisbee to Brisbee.
Yeah.
And I believe that was because they didn't want to deal with a lawsuit.
Yeah. I mean, there are always issues, but I just try to have an open mind.
It's good. It really is. It's really good to do so. I think. I mean, and I'm going to be honest. There are certain adaptations that and I won't name them.
Right.
But I'm like,
yeah.
not only was that a bad adaptation, it was just a bad movie.
Right. Right. And that is true. So, if it can't stand on its own 2 feet, then, you just have to dismiss it.
That's a very good point. And we're in the world of reboots, where sometimes a reboot, I feel like everything is a reboot.
Yep.
But sometimes the reboot improves upon
It can. The original story.
The original story. I know, like a lot of the properties, like She-Ra and My Little Pony, offer a richer narrative
Right.
than they did back in the 80s, where it was more like, we're going to sell toys.
Right. Yeah.
And that's been interesting. And there's some really great animators and graphic novel authors behind that, like Noelle Stevenson, who did She-Ra.
Right.
And Lauren Faust is an animator who did My Little Pony, and really like to and I'm a story person, and that's what brought me to libraries. To bring something that the story was probably secondary, and I don't want to. And again, like, I know people love them, the originals, but the story, I think, was oftentimes secondary to selling the toys back
Right.
then. You have somebody who's such a fan,
Right.
and who did love that part of it, but wanted more out of it. To bring a mythology to something like that, I really just applaud them.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And what they're capable of today, with animation and special effects. It's you can't make a comparison.
No, you
at
can't.
all. You really can't. So you have to take it for what it was.
So technology aside, what would you say you see as the biggest hot topics affecting librarians that librarians should have their thumb on now?
Well, I think right now we really have to look at collection development and diversity and really be honest with ourselves when we look at our collections, because it's natural for us to gravitate to what we like, to buy books that reflect our own culture. And we have to look at our communities and recognize that what might be good for me might not be good for my community.
There's continue.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I think that that's a big, and as much as I feel that we are doing that, I think it needs to be done even more. And I sometimes hesitate with the weeding and the getting rid of. Sometimes I don't know if that's looking at things in the past and judging them by a 2019 lens is not
difficult.
It's difficult to do, and I don't. I'm on the fence about. I think you have to take that item by item, and really, there's no black and white rule. You have to really analyze each collection, resource, whatever, to make that decision. But I think that there's so much that we can do to include all different types of literature. Even something like Name is a Reason to Smile. It's a book dealing with a school in Africa, but it was written by Patty Newman, and she's white. Now, yes, she wrote the book based on Reason to Smile and Christine Mwende's experiences, but it's not a distinctive voice. Probably, if I could go back to, I would have had the book be Patty Newman written with Christine Mwende, and that But when we started this in 2011, it wasn't as much of an issue. And now in 2019, I would do it differently.
I understand that. I was going to say before, there's a line in one of John Leguizamo's one-man shows that I just saw recently, and I'm gonna edit out his expletives because he has a lot of them. But it's if you don't see yourself portrayed outside of yourself, you feel invisible.
Exactly.
And I know there's definitely been a lot of talk about it, and I think it's healthy for people to realize, everybody deserves to see themselves reflected in something,
right? And in and positively,
yes,
of course.
Because in the past it's mostly been the latter.
It can be negative
a lot of times, or just like from a standpoint of somebody who doesn't really understand. So things come off as very stereotypical, or
right. So I think that that's something that we never stop doing. That's a concept. You can never say, okay, my collection is as diverse as it can be. Never. You always have to be exploring and looking and ordering, possibly from different vendors and that becomes, at least for my school librarian, that's challenging because they can only order things through a New York State contract and a bid, and it becomes difficult to sometimes. And then the whole self-published world. I mean, there's so many great self-published works out there, but they're not always evaluated and reflected.
That's always very,
and that's a new difficult, and that's a new difficulty. And of course, the whole fake news and evaluating sources. I mean, that's a big topic that we need to encourage our kids not to just take something for granted because they read it somewhere. What does that mean? Because somebody tweeted it. Well, what does that mean? And
it's becoming more of an issue as it's becoming easier for people to fake things also.
Exactly. Well, look at what happened in today's news with, we won't get into that.
I haven't even gotten
there but,
yet.
You really need to be militant and questioning and really taking a look at who wrote that, why did they write that, where is that coming from, who posted it, what's their agenda.
A bunch of librarians here a few years ago took a class. I believe Coursera was the platform that offered it. It was, I think, University of Hong Kong was the university that it was through, but it was about fake news. And it was really interesting because emotionally, a lot of us will accept something or just rage about something, if we see something. I mean, we won't even need to see anymore because the emotion is just so strong. And that's hard.
Right.
It's really hard. And it's also hard, for some people to challenge what they've always believed to be true.
Right.
But it's important. And, even things with, okay, so some of our childhood favorites might not have portrayed people
correctly
in the way. Yeah.
And it's a teachable moment.
It
I
is a
always look at
teachable
that as a
moment.
teachable moment. I'm not an advocate of just taking something and throwing it away. It depends on the situation, what it is. And, and there are times where, yes, you have to get rid of it. Without a doubt. No question. But again, you can use it as a teachable moment to really be able to say, what's the difficulty here, and why do you think this was, and how have we come, how can we see this in a 2019 lens, and where have we come? Have we come far enough? Do we still need to push? Do we still need to educate? Do we still need to question?
So my answer to that would be yes, yes,
of course. It could never be no.
No. Yeah.
Just like you never have a perfectly diverse collection.
Because
doesn't
there's
exist.
usually always something.
There's always
that
something
you don't know about, and a lot of times there's just either the materials haven't been printed yet,
Right.
or it's just not really
Right.
out there.
And you just need to always expand your horizons. It's really the bottom line. As a librarian, hopefully we're always looking and seeking more knowledge.
That's what I would like to say, for me, defines the what's the word I'm looking for? Just the career in general, and the goal of the librarian, the mission of the librarian.
Right. Well, I actually, and I can't take credit for this statement. It was from a friend of mine who's a teacher. She had won an award, and she had said in her acceptance speech, being a teacher is not a job. It's who I am as a person. And I really do feel that being a librarian is not a job. It's who I am as a person.
It's written in our
it's
DNA.
Written. It's just all part of me in so many ways. And
I don't know about you, but I've done book advisory, like reader's advisory in like bookstores. I mean, like I a few months ago was at Barnes and Noble, and there was a mother and a child, I guess around maybe like 10, and they were looking at the graphic novels. And I just couldn't help myself.
Yeah,
and she's
of course.
just like, I don't know, what about this, and this?
And you just jump in.
And I'm just like, and I just kind of like, and I felt bad. I'm like, am I being nosy? Am I being a librarian? And I'm just like, hey. So I don't know if you'd like any of this stuff. It was, they were looking at really more the adult graphic novel collection, which, content-wise, maybe, I don't know if it was above her head. She might have still loved it. But I just, I had just finished Witch Boy by Molly Ostertag, who is now engaged to Noelle Stevenson. And I thought that it was a wonderful, wonderful graphic novel that would appeal to people of all ages. And I was just like, have you read this? And the mother, they just were like, oh, no. And like the next thing I know, they're buying it. So.
No, I do that all the time. Sometimes my kids get upset with me when we'll be out in a situation like that, and I'll see a kid reading a book that whatever it is, The Lightning Thief or something, and I just automatically like, oh, where are you? Do you like, it's Percy? And then my kids like look at me like, oh God, mom, really? Do you have to? But I can't help myself.
You want to talk about representation and lifting voices up. I commend Rick Riordan.
Yes.
He has been, I'm sure you've been following what he's been doing recently. So he has his mythology series.
Right.
But he has been, I guess, publishing mythologies
from other cultures and by authors of that culture. Yeah, so I just read the Aruna Shah
How was
series.
that one?
I loved it.
Loved it. He's really, if you want to talk about somebody who's really working to elevate the voices of the people who haven't, and like giving them their platform, but he's using the fact that his series is so prolific and so beloved as a vehicle, and handing the keys over.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think authors that are in that place can do that for others, and why not? Doesn't take anything away from you.
Yeah, he's really.
I don't understand why that would be a problem for anybody, but yeah, use your position to be able to promote and do other things.
I'm really glad he decided to, or he saw, that was the way to go instead of doing it himself,
right,
and not really representing the way that
yeah, absolutely
it should be.
Yep. No, I enjoy and I love him as an author.
I love
and
him too. I'm a mythology person.
Yeah, I do. I love mythology as well. So yeah, and it should. But Chinese mythology should be written by someone who's of a Chinese descent. Makes perfect sense,
Yes.
And not to say that someone else couldn't, but
it's
important.
for people to be able to tell the stories of their culture authentically.
Exactly. And if it means telling it through him, then that's okay too. I mean,
but he puts his name in the smaller print.
Right? And he just writes the little introduction, and he's all good.
I know, and it's like, and here you go, and you have this new author who's a lovely, wonderful author, and you know that you've liked these books of theirs, and let's go to the next one. So really, Donna, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you
for sharing yourself and all of your experience with us.
Wonderful. It's wonderful. Thank you for having me. And maybe we'll come back again another time.
Please do. You do workshops?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely.
If somebody would like to learn more about your workshops or Reason to Smile, where could they find you?
Okay. Well, the Nassau Boces website. Just go to nassauboces.org and go to library services, and everything is there. And Reason to Smile is at reasontosmile.org with a number 2, reason number 2 smile. We're also on Facebook, and we just started Instagram. So, we're trying to expand our horizons a little bit.
Thank you so much. And we are going to close this chapter of Turn the
the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.